He was publicly humiliated by a racist manager who thought he was just another poor old man in a wheelchair. The manager shamed him in front of a packed dining room, attempting to throw him out of his exclusive, high-end restaurant. Little did the manager know, the man he was insulting was not just another customer. And in less than an hour, that arrogant manager wasn't just going to lose his job, he was about to lose the entire restaurant. The heavy glass doors of Aria, a critically acclaimed restaurant where reservations were made months in advance, hissed open at precisely 7:02 in the evening. The camera pans across the opulent lobby. Sunlight was long gone, replaced by the soft, warm glow of crystal chandeliers that cast shimmering patterns on the polished marble floor. Through those doors, a wheelchair slowly rolled in, carrying Arthur Williams, a man of 78 years. He wore a simple tweed coat, clean but visibly worn at the elbows, and a pair of leather shoes that, while polished, had seen decades of faithful service. His face was kind, etched with the sort of wrinkles that come from a life of quiet observation, not stress. He did not look like he belonged in a place where a single entree cost more than his entire outfit. And that was entirely the point. He guided his chair to the hostess stand, where a young woman named Clara greeted him with a genuine, welcoming smile. Before she could speak, a man glided towards them. This was Julian, the manager, a man in his late 30s who wore a tailored suit like a suit of armor and an expression of perpetual, mild disgust. He surveyed Arthur from head to toe, his lips curling into a faint sneer. Julian spoke, his voice smooth but cold. "May I help you?" Arthur smiled warmly, unfazed. "Yes, I have a reservation for two. Under the name Williams. For 7 o'clock. Julian tapped at his computer screen for a moment, his posture theatrical. He sighed dramatically. "I'm sorry, sir, but there is no reservation under that name. Perhaps you're mistaken about the restaurant. Or the day." Clara, the hostess, stepped forward nervously. "Sir, I took the reservation myself this morning. It was for Williams, 7 o'clock. Julian silenced her with a single, icy glare that could have frozen fire. He turned his full, undivided attention back to Arthur. "As I was saying," he continued, his voice dripping with condescension, "we are a fully booked establishment. We simply do not have walk-in availability. Especially not for—" He gestured vaguely at Arthur's wheelchair, "circumstances that could present a challenge to our service flow." A hush fell over the nearby tables. Forks paused midway to mouths. Conversations dwindled into silence. The air grew thick with unspoken tension. Arthur's pleasant expression did not change. "I assure you, I called this morning. My son will be joining me shortly. He is parking the car." Julian let out a short, insulting laugh. "Sir, many people claim to have reservations. Aria is an establishment of a certain caliber. We are striving for a Michelin star, and our ambience and clientele are paramount. Perhaps a place more appropriate for you would be a better fit." Throughout this verbal assault, Arthur Williams remained perfectly still. He did not flinch. He did not argue. His expression was one of serene, almost detached observation, as if he were a scientist studying a particularly unpleasant insect. This infuriating calm seemed to fuel Julian's arrogance. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice into a conspiratorial whisper that was still loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "I don't know how people like you even hear about places like this, but we are not a charity. We can't have you blocking the entryway. It's a fire hazard." He straightened up, his face a mask of finality. "Now, if you are quite finished wasting our time, the exit is that way." Julian turned his back on Arthur, a clear gesture of dismissal, and began to walk toward the center of the dining room. He believed the confrontation was over. He believed he had won. But Arthur did not move. He waited a beat, letting the silence stretch and curdle. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached into the inner pocket of his old tweed coat. He did not pull out a wallet. He pulled out an old, simple flip phone, the kind that hadn't been seen in over a decade. He flipped it open with a quiet click and, from memory, pressed 7 digits. He lifted the phone to his ear, his eyes never leaving Julian's retreating back. When the call connected, he spoke just 5 words, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of an avalanche. "Michael," he said. "It's time." Julian, the manager, heard the quiet words but didn't turn around. He smirked to himself, assuming the old man was calling his son to complain, a final, pathetic gesture of defiance. The battle was won, and he was the victor. He took another step towards a table of VIPs, ready to smooth over the unpleasantness with a complimentary bottle of champagne. He never made it to the table. The main doors to the kitchen, usually swinging with the quiet rhythm of a busy service, burst open. But it wasn't a chef or a waiter who emerged. It was a man in his mid-40s, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark gray suit that radiated authority. He was flanked by 2 other individuals, a man and a woman, both holding tablets and looking stern. The man's name was Michael Sterling, and he moved with a calm, predatory focus, his eyes scanning the room for a single target. He bypassed the wealthy patrons and the stunned staff, making a direct line for Julian. He stopped a few feet away, his presence so commanding that Julian instinctively stood up straighter. "Julian Vance?" Michael asked. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the room's silence like a diamond blade. Julian, flustered by this sudden interruption, puffed out his chest. "Yes. I am the manager here." "And who might you be?" Michael's expression remained neutral, which somehow made it more intimidating. "My name is Michael Sterling. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Williams Hospitality Group." The name hung in the air. Julian's smug expression faltered, a flicker of confusion crossing his features. Williams Hospitality was a titan in the industry, owning dozens of the most exclusive hotels and restaurants across the country. Aria was their crown jewel. Williams Hospitality? Julian stammered, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. Michael gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod towards the front of the restaurant, where Arthur Williams still sat calmly in his wheelchair, the old flip phone now resting in his lap. "The Williams in Williams Hospitality Group," Michael said, his voice flat and final. "You have just met our founder and owner, Mr. Arthur Williams." If a soul could be heard shattering, that was the sound in the Aria dining room. The color drained from Julian's face. His mind raced, connecting the dots with sickening speed. The simple clothes, the unnerving calm, the refusal to be intimidated, the phone call. It wasn't a pathetic old man. It was a test. It was the test, the one whispered about in company lore, the legend of the owner who would visit his own establishments in disguise. And he had failed more spectacularly than he could have ever imagined. His gaze darted to Arthur, no longer seeing a blemish to be scrubbed away, but a king whose entire kingdom he had just spat upon. Arthur Williams hadn't been born into wealth. He'd started with a single diner 60 years ago, washing dishes by hand and sleeping in the back room. He built his empire on one unshakable principle: respect is the only currency that truly matters. He believed a restaurant's soul wasn't found in its Michelin stars or its wine list, but in how it treated the person who came to wash the dishes, or the elderly customer who just wanted a quiet meal. Several times a year, he would visit his own businesses, unannounced, dressed as he was today, to see that soul for himself. Michael lifted his tablet, the screen already glowing. "Julian, Mr. Williams' core principle is non-negotiable. We do not tolerate arrogance, cruelty, or prejudice at any level of this organization. Your treatment of him, which my team and I have just reviewed on the live security feed from the moment he entered, is a catastrophic violation of every value we stand for." Michael's finger swiped across the screen. "As of this precise moment, your employment with Williams Hospitality is terminated. Your final severance, as stipulated in your contract's gross misconduct clause, is 0. Please hand over your keys and security pass." You have 2 minutes to collect your personal belongings from your office. Security will escort you out. Julian stood there, speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The armor of his expensive suit had dissolved, leaving only a terrified, defeated man. He looked past Michael, his eyes pleading with the old man in the wheelchair. But Arthur was not looking at him. He was looking at Clara, the young hostess, who stood near her station with tears in her eyes. Julian, realizing no mercy was coming, numbly unclipped his keys from his belt and handed them over. Without another word, he turned and walked, not like a proud manager, but like a ghost, towards the back office. The staff watched in stunned silence. The patrons, now understanding the full scope of the drama, averted their eyes as if ashamed on his behalf. With the situation handled, Arthur Williams finally wheeled himself forward. He stopped beside Clara, whose face was pale with shock. He smiled that same warm, gentle smile from before. "Clara, is it?" he asked softly. She could only nod. "You have a good heart," Arthur said. "You tried to do the right thing, even when it was difficult. Michael will be in touch with you tomorrow morning. I believe we have a management training program that you would be perfect for." Clara's jaw dropped. Tears of shock became tears of gratitude. Just then, the restaurant doors opened again. A man in his 50s, well-dressed and with his father's kind eyes, walked in. "Dad? Sorry, the parking was a nightmare. Did I miss anything?" Arthur chuckled softly. "You missed the appetizer, son. But you're right on time for the main course." He looked around the silent, chastened dining room. That night, Aria did not earn a Michelin star. But it regained something far more valuable, its soul. It was a lesson written not on a menu, but on the faces of every employee who witnessed it. True power is not the suit you wear or the authority you wield. It is the decency you show when no one is watching, and the respect you give to those you believe have nothing to offer. If this story reminds you that dignity is for everyone, regardless of their appearance, then subscribe for more real-life stories that matter. Because sometimes, the most powerful man in the room is the one you'd never expect.